Sovereignty decree. I have and always have been and always will be free. I am a sovereign, living soul personifying spirit through my human form. Although the Bible and other books of religion may mean something in the court of law, I do swear by my own sovereignty and personal agency under oath to the notion that all and every one of us are single cells of an all, experiencing the universe and each of our unique and individual adventures. Is in this ever growing, ever expanding, ever evolving, ever changing experience of the living, all whereas I understand, know in my own direct experience of spirit, it is my duty to extend beyond more intellectual phantasmagoria and invoke, provoke, and inspire to do the things that test my reality, my spirit, and my truths we all live by. All life is but a big game. It has many actors and many acts. The acts presented by a society are the rules of the game they play together. Those who choose not to play, those who choose not to be a member of the game exist freely in the principle of sovereign presence. There is a fundamental law of principle of mathematics, but none of error. There is a principle of health, but none of disease. There is a principle of truth, but none of dishonesty. There is a principle of light, but none of darkness. There is a principle of abundance, but none of poverty. There is a principle of sovereignty, but none of slavery. And there is a principle of meek, but none of greedy self-interests. There is a gathering of mankind known in our Western civilization shared world, which acts as the principle whom creates and installs the acts by which persons perform life, the acts of parliament. Do we see displayed in all these acts the evidence of truth, the clarity of light, a mathematical formula for abundance of health and common good of all? When something is spelled out in truth, clear, concise, complete, unequivocal, and understandable by a child, it is self-evident that the acts by which these form boundaries within which we must all live and perform and are convoluted, deceptive, and interpreted by an elite few for great profit. We have an elite few controlling the destiny of us all and imposing other notions upon us. There are many conflicting definitions of how our organ of justice operates in its mechanical interaction with living souls and persons. There are those who would profess that we live under a jurisdiction that draws its substance from the common law evolved and inherited from the peoples of Britain, codified in such instruments as the Magna Carta 1215, the King James Bible 1611, the Habeas Corpus Act 1679, the English Bill of Rights 1688, the Coronation of Oaths Act, and the Constitution of Commonwealth of Australia, where we as all living souls are deemed innocent until proven guilty, where we are as a community deemed to have substance and may exchange freely of our substance, or if necessary, weigh our own conflict of interest before all in the form of judge and jury of 12 of our peers. There are those who profess that we live under a jurisdiction that draws its substance from the laws of equity, whereby our organ of justice has been commanded by a private organization or corporation in the attitude of creditor and secured party deems persons chattels, debtors, holding negotiating bills of no substance, and are deemed guilty until proven innocent, where our organ of justice is an attitude of subservience to a secured party and on its behalf operates the courts as debtors, commerce court in favor of the secured party. The present administration of our organ of justice operates the workings of law in a deceptive and unnecessarily complicated labyrinth of copywritten statutes and precedents that may be interpreted only by the elite doctrine conveyors, the well-paid minions. There is no evidence to indicate that the organ of justice and government is administered to support the common good of all. In cosmic law, without contraries, there can be no progression. The present dominating attitude of self-interest and greed expressed by humanity's organs of government, justice, and corporation is hallmark of a collective process of reconciliation, a spiritual IQ test, an evolution and a maturing of mankind, away from the limited potentials of living the paradigm of domination, control, separation, division, fight, struggle, war, and against the meek, to be the common good of all. The meek are those of our herd identified in the Bible as the inheritors of the earth. Dictionary defines meek as humble, patient, gentle, kind, soft, and mild, and also in negative it describes the meek as overly submissive, compliant, tame, spiritless, docile, and as under provocation from others. The meek represent the spiritual principle of unity consciousness on all-inclusive, unconditional, nurturing, selfishly selfless, enjoying the simplicity, the unfolding, and responding with the cosmic power of allowance. us, while in patience and humility, creating the intent of the law of attraction will ultimately work upon us. Acceptance has the meek seen as being compliant, tame, spiritless, and docile, but the core gentle kindness awaits the separated egos from the adventures in separation, division, destruction, war, and obliteration to lend its great spirit to unity. To ponder a perspective of the attitudes at play in our present society, we may observe ordinary mankind in material consciousness, when growing toward the good, displays a balanced, benign ego, personality of meek, conforming, accepting, and allowing. When no man has fallen into delusion, he displays this interested, greedy ego of domination and control, and cosmically evolving from the dance of opposites is spiritual mankind, expressing attitude of soul-centered ego expression of love and sweetness. Casual glance indicates we are allowing our solar system to be to be controlled by the spiritually immature, those who take materiality seriously, seeking puerile need to possess and control in lieu of allow and love. In simple terms, we may define the reconciled as those who would seek to dissociate from one society and move to a new society, to move from the good for me to the good of all. Those whose spirit emanates love, change, freedom, and eternity. I accept there will be many agents for the government concerned and suspicious of this simple solution to the present ongoing government and judicial tyranny. In kind regard and compassion for those government agents still to awaken to their spirituality, I offer discussion and negotiation to understand this human process of diplomatic protest. Protest in favor of the population of a test of integrity and enlightenment. Myself and other sovereign individuals are to test the integrity of the Australian government and other governments of the Commonwealth by choosing to remove our consent to be represented and governed, therefore choose to operate as foreign sovereigns with diplomatic immunity in this deceptive system of government justice and its society. My intent is to provoke, invoke, and inspire nations which will imbue an optimistically freer and more just society. My intent is to promote a society enthusiastically excited by the challenge to claim openly, clearly, and unequivocally a heartfelt dedication to the common good of all. A society which works to ensure all authority is expressed lawfully, exercised with restraint, accountability, understanding, and compassion. A society with sovereign leadership which prides itself on clear public oath to the common good, guided by the continual input of community-based integrity auditing. A society founded upon a permaculture of garden, of decentralized goodness-sharing communities. I choose to live in peace with current communities whose members pledge membership to a society governed by the present Law Society and its hidden masters. Law Society membership has made an oath to a foreign government, the Queen, and hence relinquished any and all kind of authority over any sovereign individual, free man on the land. I am neither a person nor a citizen. I am a living soul, personifying spirit through human form. I am a spiritual being and reserve my God-given right to enjoy spiritual, intellectual, and physical freedom now and forevermore in all dimensions. I have lived with honor in my life, having paid my way honestly always. I have contributed my effort and sweat equitably, openly, and generously in my family, my tribe, my community. I have paid all taxes, fines, fees, licenses, interest, and various other extortations in good faith. I have opened and operated with absolute honesty always, to the experimenting point of being penalized for my honesty and on many occasions. I have an honest nature and feel naturally compelled to use utter truth to be my best, to the best of my ability and advantage. I support the notion that knowingly telling a lie is actually harmful physically, psychically, and spiritually, and is destructive to the neural net in my brain, and has a viral effect on my mind like a virus in a computer. I choose to live mindfully of the ever-growing and evolving secular ethic of my being, a living soul sharing a brief stay upon our beautiful planet with many other living souls, trusting we all together are seeking to enjoy our life and find peace, abundance, and love, and conscious knowing of enlightenment and immortality. Our present government system is destructive and run to benefit many self-interested, greedy, spiritually immature beings. It is not for the common good of all. It has deceptively played us as fools with treason, selling us to the bankers, has allowed theft and extortation of our life force. I grew up in the gentle nurture of women. They had the most loving, heartfelt respect for our authorities and taught me our queen was the personification of goodness itself. I've come to learn that their own innocent and genuine love and humble respect was all continued to be betrayed by the attitudes of those that govern and judge us all. There is something wrong with the way our world is being run and has been run. Observation of listening to Aboriginal elders has provided epiphany and revelation to simple truths invisible to minion servants of the system. Much information has been dedicated. Dissemination on the internet reveals the degree and extent of deception, fraud, and theft by corporations, corporate governments, and justice systems that are industries for great profit, power, privilege for the few. This justice proportional to wealth is operating for the benefit of the wealthy only, deceptively exercising tyranny of us all. If it is true we live in a free and democratic society, then I am free to leave. No more do I submit my application or register. No more do I surrender my will and beg to be another hold on form of force over my life. My family, my tribe, and my property will all have equal sovereignty as appears in reality. We are all equal before the law. We are all unique and individual expressions of a greater whole. The Law Society is the maker and administrator of statutory regulations and bylaw, and the Society's behavior is a testimony to the revelation of its motivation, its intent, and agenda. It exists as a labyrinth of contradictions and paradoxes, consisting as a body of beings interested in generating wealth for themselves first. If our collective organ of justice was operating in truth, it would be a community-based home vibe venue provided free access to a common sense, good conscience, wise counsel, life direction, guidance, or rehabilitation run and operated by community elders. It is my understanding that the only members the Law Society may use for courts is for financial benefit, gain, or reward, and is only the Law Society's members who may act for others in the courts. And people who are not members of the Law Society do not enjoy full access to the courts. These public places have business hours and are run as business for the profit of members of the Law Society. This operation in society is founded on self-interest and greed and is conducted by the spiritually immature. As a sovereign living soul, it is my duty to promote, provoke, invoke, inspire, and demonstrate a fairer, more just society for all cells of our collective body of humanity. As one cell of our organism, my humble use of the following notice is to declare my love for the wholeness that we all are. It is my will to bring vital health to the presently affected organs of humanity, its lungs, the judiciary, its heart, government, its immune system, the peace force, police, and military. It is my will to share at all times peaceful, optimistic, compassionate, truthful, loving notions to ponder and encourage all to live our most magnificent potential of goodness. I use this notice to bring to attention to all human beings of goodness to erase above it the complicated rigmarole of organized religions, the corruption of our organs of government and justice, and the cancerous greed of corporations, and the paradigm of separation, division, fight, struggle, and war. I use this notice to reinstate into humanity our good nature of utter goodness. Insight from the work of Menred Think Free has let us know that we may establish for ourselves claim of right, that we may live peacefully together, immune to unnecessary burdens of corporate greed. The following notice is used with compassion and consideration for the challenges to thought and feeling that will be experienced by many government agents and officers. While now living through our collective enlightened experience of the global transformation of the collective consciousness of humanity, I forgive all those minion government agents, officers over my life who have given me cause to find our living system repugnant, not operating for the common good of all. It is not their fault that they know that they are simply present hypnotic sleep state, transmitting and stalling attitudes of policy on their for their chosen masters. Please take note, as a sovereign living soul, free man on the land, I claim sovereign right to do what our groups or societies may or may not join. As a free man on the land, I am not a member of the Law Society, neither do I apply to be a member, nor do I accept obligation to be a member, and as such I am beyond the jurisdiction of all the statutes, bylaws, governments, regulations, permits, copywritten material, and other licenses. As a free man on the land, I claim to be right and dissociated for myself from a society that does not unreservedly support the common good of all. As a free man on the land, I claim the right to dissociate myself from a society whose government and judiciary does not answer clearly, completely, articulately, and openly, honestly, and publicly. As a sovereign, I claim that the right to dissociate myself from a society whose government and judiciary moves deceptively among many civil liberties, and where there is not clear rights and freedoms I must give up to remain a member. As a sovereign living soul, I live in love and peace with all. Conflict and dispute is unavoidable, unnecessary, and undesirable, and when it arises, it is to be dealt with using discussion, negotiation, and if necessary, adjudication in a court of competent jurisdiction. If dispute arises in regard to a notice, it is to be discussed and negotiated in televised public forum. It is by example to lead the way and join a support of the society as a free man on the land. Sovereign living souls participating and pursuing a notion of decentralized goodness and sharing is the present paradigm of our intent here. The present paradigm of empire and centralization of power serves only the greedy and psychotic and their need to extort life force in the form of money from those who choose to live in the limits of the separated ego. Please take note, until there is evidence of spiritual maturity in the beings of leadership of humanity's corporate vessels, I choose for my own self-protection to remain a foreign sovereign with full diplomatic immunity. Humanity is awakening to a new authority. Our sovereignty as an individual, tribe, and community is the awakening global authority. The evidence of spiritual maturity I will be looking for, so I may seem fit is the time to re-enter society, is the duty of the corporations to begin to immediately collaborate all the armies and police forces of our world to invoke utter goodness upon the entire force of our collective organ of immune system. We command the entire force to perform the most profound acts of creation to establish the entire world as a permacultural garden of peace for all and humanity. Our most capable, strong, focused, and talented fellow cells united in martial precision, leading, teaching, and enlightening the transforming world. We begin immediately in Iraq to apologize for what has been done and to establish access to safe, free food, shelter, and water for all. This is all we as sovereigns ask of our governments, and it may happen in a moment. When our collective voice is loud enough to hear, our very own flesh and blood will throw down the arms and weapons of mass destruction, deceiving hate, creating masters in exchange for tools, laughing in joy and wonder as we collectively try something different. We have no need to fight or abandon the system, we simply must transform it. I bring to your attention important facts about my existence here in this reality, within which I share breath, life, and a living community. For my health and well-being, for my homeostasis and equanimity, for my own physical, psychological, emotional, and spiritual protection, for my name, my honor, and my reputation, my most valuable possessions, I require being master and the commander of my own life, my destiny, and my identity. I am sovereign without subjects. I am sovereign. Nothing may be foisted upon me without my agreement. As a sovereign, I have supreme, absolute, and uncontrollable authority. As a sovereign, I have the right either to accept or decline offers of contract. My authority is the age-old, timeless, universal respect for the intrinsic power, property, and responsibilities of the sovereign individual. My authority is my law to do unto others as I would have them do unto myself. My authority is my choice to invoke, provoke, and inspire to do good for all and not evil. My authority is my choice to comply with mutual respect, which serves to bring balance, rhythm, and harmony of life to the community. My authority is my choice to express unconditional respect to every living soul. My authority is responsibility I accept as a co-creator in the creation of my world and my fellows. Life adventure. My authority is responsibility I accept for my words and my actions. My authority is the mindfulness I care to apply to the creation of my attitudes and opinions, thoughts, processes, choices, desires, and feelings. My authority is my being self-responsible. My authority is my attitude. My authority is my capacity to love, to be compassionate and truthful. My authority is inherent divinity. By virtue of the fact that I exist, I am due peace and access to appropriate portions of this world and its abundance. It is my due duty to perform to government the society of the community among which I exist of my understandings of the mechanics of our shared world and the intent to which I exercise my understanding of my consequent claim of rights, my declaration of peace, and my declaration of diplomatic immunity. All national and state constitutions, laws, ordinances, regulations, rules, codes, and public policy in all nations and states are private copyrighted material. I do not possess license or have authority to use such copyrighted material. Consequently, this material does not have any authority over my property, my personal affairs, or me. As a sovereign, I rule autonomously and am not subject to any entity or jurisdiction anywhere. The only law government that may create its service to me is to have a flow of commerce for our shared human commonwealth, to be shared efficiently, effectively, and honestly within our living communities and within and between our states of being, and protect the inherent rights, life, and freedom of all our citizens. Government has no authority to implement its laws against sovereign except for the contracts entered into knowingly and willingly. I issue this notice in loving respect of my duty to bring my own self into greater alignment with divine law. I know that all my world is reflection, and that I may be seen as repugnant in life, in society, and world that is not balanced to me. I acknowledge the Australian national affirmation of reconciliation as a symbol of achieving unity consciousness, and in simple evaporating form for the good of me, to the spirit of the good of all. When I have perfected the issue of love from my heart unconditionally, unreservedly to all, when I have learned how to reflect compassion and truth, I may experience the moria of government, justice, and its society. I rescind, revoke, and cancel any action or debt of any undisclosed implications against my identity that may have incurred through any tacit or implied agreements entered by virtue of having my birth certificate, a driver's license, a passport, a tax file number, a customer reference number, or any other government form of licenses. I hereby declare abandonment of all said numbers. I hereby dissociate with all legal identity. I have no self, I have no person, except for my name, Sheena. I hereby declare my sovereign living soul appellation to be grammatically signified by the form Sheena, sovereign living soul. I have completed sovereign immunity, and therefore my power to contract or not is limited to my word. I understand that it is undeniable truth, and all mankind acknowledges it in the myriad of religions, cultures, and philosophies, that God exists as a supreme and absolute, uncontrollable authority of all creation. I understand that God is the template for sovereignty. I understand that as a child of God, the power of sovereignty is inherent in my being and is the externalization of God force, of which I am but a single cell, portion, and every single cell another living soul with whom I share life and breath and community. And I understand that living souls with whom I share life and breath and community have the right to either declare or wear their sovereignty or consent to relinquish this power to another. I understand that as living souls in different stages of our spiritual evolution, and as such, it may be necessary for some living souls to exist under the care and control of others. May we entertain the notion that all may be conceived, perceived, believed, experienced, and imagined. All, if I choose, is to term all when communicating the notion of God. Therefore, we and each and every one of us are single cells of an all-experiencing universe, and each of our unique and individual life adventures is the ever-growing, ever-expanding, ever-evolving, ever-changing experience of the all. As a single cell of the all-experiencing self, I am sovereign. As I am reading or hearing these words, we may differ in what we understand and acknowledge. However, this is my notice and understand and claim of right and claim of diplomatic immunity as a sovereign soul. Whereas I understand Australia is common law jurisdiction, and I understand that the law belongs to the notion of divine abstractions where things have no contraries absolutes such as love, essences, human archetypes, aesthetics, algorithms, certainties, ethics, experiences, ideals, logics, mathematics, and proofs are not acknowledged. I understand equality before the law is paramount and mandatory, and I understand true law solely for our advantage is immutable, and we have no escape from its operation. I understand law exists to preserve and protect our life, our liberty, and our rights and our property. I understand that the hierarchy of law is God sovereign over God's creation, man, and man sovereign over man's government, and government sovereign over government's creation, the corporation, person. And I understand that sovereignty exists with people until we all begin to wear our sovereignty. Personal function under sovereignty encourages the same in each other. We will become unnecessarily oppressed, slaves of spiritual immaturity, spiritually immature who presently hold the reins of power and decision that affect us all. I understand that the organs of government and justice are an extension of man's divinity and hence are a creation of man and subservient to man. And I understand that when government or justice does not unservedly serve the man freely in its service to self-interest, greed, and others, I understand that the role of judicial process in the resolution of conflict and the role of the courts is to deal with injustice once it has already occurred. And I understand that the honor of life in law I seek is neither to dispute or conflict. I require not courts or lawyers, and I understand that I may be a claim of right in the righteously living, and I understand that a statute is defined as a legislation rule of society which has been given the force of law. And I understand that a society is described as a number of people joined by mutual consent to deliberate, determine, and act for a common goal. And I understand all acts and statutes which apply to only one society is not for everyone. I understand the only form of government recognized as a lawful Australia is the representative one, and I understand the representation requires mutual consent. I understand that this is the absence of mutual consent, neither representation nor governments, and can exist. I understand the difference between being a citizen of the Commonwealth and a sovereign living soul enjoying the privilege of being born on the continent is separate. I understand that I may claim human Aboriginal sovereign title to the country that I am and the organism of humanity. I understand citizens subservient to an administration is but one option of this reality. I understand the distinction between law and executive administration and prerogative decree is a failure to maintain the formal differences between these things that must lead to a conception of law as nothing more than authorization by force or intimidation rather than the guarantee of freedom equally to all. I understand that these who have a tax file number are in fact employees of the government and are bound by the statutes created by the federal government. I understand that this is lawful to abandon one's tax file number, customer reference number, driver's license number, etc., to declare dissociation to the personal registered birth certificate and electoral roll. I understand that registration is the act of leaving in care to authority of a vessel until sovereign authority. The captain, the capital, the wealth, the worth, the value, etc., takes repossession, and I understand that the government has assumed ownership or legal entity of the birth certificate of Sheena and has claimed under the laws of maritime salvage. And I understand that if I am stating here an untrue or misguided duty of the governing structure to discharge my declusion with a clear and concise and sworn statement of the true mechanics of our governing structure. I understand my birth certificate is a negotiable instrument, a registered security, a stock certificate, evidencing or representing the preferred stock of the corporation and against which may be held with surety. It is one of the kinds of security instruments used by the government to obtain loans from its creditor, under which bankruptcy and other forms of economic dissolution may occur. I understand my dissociated with the legal entity on the birth certificates marked named Sheena as declaration I seek no claim or entity towards. I understand people in Australia have a right to revoke, deny consent, or be represented and thus governed. I understand that if anyone does revoke or deny consent, they exist free of government control and statutory restraints. I understand that with this notice, I constructively can deny consent to being represented. I understand that with this notice, I declare diplomatic immunity, whereas a sovereign living soul expressing through human form, I no longer lawfully revoke consent and do exist free of all statutory restrictions, obligations, and limitations. Whereas I, Sheena, understand that acting peacefully within community standards does not breach the peace, and I understand that with this notice I am declaring peaceful existence with all. I understand that any action for which I can apply for and receive license itself must be a fundamentally lawful action. And whereas I am a free man on the land who operates with full responsibility and not a child, I do not need permission to engage in lawful and peaceful activities, especially from those who claim limited liability. I understand by law it is defined as a rule of corporation, and I understand corporations are legal fictions and require contracts in order to claim authority and control over parties. I understand legal fictions lack a soul and cannot exert any control over those who are thus blessed and operate with respect to the knowledge as only a fool would allow soulless fictions to dictate one's actions. I understand that I have a right to use my property without having to pay for the use and enjoyment of it. I understand that as a summons, it is merely an invitation to attend and creates no obligation or dishonor if ignored. I understand peace officers and government agents have a duty to distinguish between the statutes and law and those who attempt to enforce statutes against a free man in the land and are in fact breaking the law. I have no power to refuse intercourse or interaction with peace officers who have not observed me breach the peace. Whereas permanently stopped by acquiescence, barring any peace officer or prosecutor from bringing charges against a free man on the land. Act is created. This claim is not responded in the stated fashion and time. Therefore, let it be known that any and all concerned affected parties, my name is Sheena, do hereby state specifically and unequivocally my intent to peacefully and lawfully exist free of all statutory obligations, restrictions, maintain all rights to law, travel, trade, exchange, and barter. Furthermore, I claim that these actions are not outside my community standards and will in fact be supported by the community in our desire for truth and maximum freedom. Furthermore, I claim that the right to engage in these actions and further claim that all our property and is held by under a claim of right. Furthermore, I claim that anyone who interferes with my lawful activities, having been served this notice and claim, who fails properly dispute to make lawful counterclaim is breaking the law, cannot claim good faith or color of right, and such transgressions will be dealt with and properly convened by court de jure. Furthermore, I claim that the courts are de facto and bound by law and Law Equity Act and are in fact the profitable businesses of conducting witnesses and facilitating the transactions of security interests, and further claim they require the consent of both parties prior to providing any such services. Furthermore, I claim all transactions of security interests require the consent of both parties, and I do hereby not consent to any transactions of security issuances issuing under any act as herein stated as a free man on the land, and I'm not subject to any claims against my freedom. Furthermore, I claim my free schedule for any transgressions by peace officers, government principals, or agents of justice system participating as the control. These $100 per hour or portion thereof is being questioned, interrogated, or any way detained, harassed, or otherwise regulated, and $3,000 per hour or portion of them. If I am handcuffed, transported, incarcerated, or subjected to any adjudication promptus without my express consent and notarized consent. Furthermore, I claim the right to schedule a notary public to secure payment of the aforementioned fee schedule against any transgressors who by their way, actions, or omissions harm me or my interests directly or by proxy in any way. Furthermore, I claim that the right to convene with the proper court de jure in order to address any potentially criminal actions of any peace officers, government principals, or agents of the justice system participants who have been served notice of this claim, fail to dispute or discuss or make lawful counterclaim and interfere by act or omission of the law. I exercise this properly and claim the established rights and freedoms. Furthermore, I claim the law of agent and principal applies to the service upon both. Furthermore, I claim that the right to deal with any counterclaims or dispute publicly and in an open forum, using discussion and negotiation to capture on videotape what is said in negotiation for whatever lawful purposes I see fit. Affected parties wishing to dispute the claims made herein or make their own counterclaims must respond appropriately within 10 days of the service of this notice. Responses must be under oath and to attestation upon a commercial liability and penalty of perjury, and registered under the notary office herein provided no later than 10 days from the date of original service as attested by way of certificate of this service. Failure to register a dispute against the claims and made herein will result in automatic default and judgment, permit revocable estoppel by acquiescence, barring the bringing charges under the statute of my act against myself. Sovereign Living Soul, Sheena, dated October 14th, 2024. And as a witness is my camera.